Hello and welcome to day 4 of 13 Days of Halloween. I got myself a Halloween cat. Mr. Pepper's here to help me out today. I'm Dylan Lang. I host a YouTube show called Dylan Knows, which is going on its 11th year, usually on Saturday nights. And I've done a variety of other shows as well. This one I'm doing primarily because I love Halloween. I think 13 Days of Halloween is appropriate. So I've got 13 various lists that are Halloween related in some way or another that I'm going to do for you. It's unprecedented. I've never done 13 straight days of shows, so I'm going to keep trying to do that. I've done 4 straight so far. Granted, my show on Saturday didn't really have anything to do with 13 Days of Halloween, but I still like to consider it doing that way. But and one of those days, however, I won't be doing it. My daughter's actually going to be doing an episode for me of 13 Days of Halloween, so that's always going to be great too. So I don't have to do everything then. But yeah, so that's what's going on here. Today's top 10 list is the top 10 best Tim Burton films. Tim Burton, for all you know who out there, all the people out there who know this, is a macabre artistic director who's interested in bizarre, as I said, macabre again, items, but he's a very good director. I think he's been nominated for some Oscars, never won any, and has some pretty decent movies. Actually has 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 movies he has made, and some short films. He likes to dabble in stop motion animation, and he likes to work with the same people. Pepper, you're blocking my list. Likes to work with the same people over and over again. Give me a second, Pep. There you go. Which is, some people find annoying, but I think it's pretty cool if you find somebody you're comfortable with and they're the perfect role for the perfectly cast for the role. You should go for it totally. So he also usually casts his girlfriends, partners, whatever. And most of the time they're pretty good actresses as well. So we got a lot of good stuff here. It's almost right down the middle. Now I am going to preface this by saying I have not seen Beetlejuice yet. I am a big Tim Burton fan, but I just have not had a chance to go see Beetlejuice. So I'm not even putting that in the running. So because this is a list show, the lists are fluid. This isn't the end all be all. Next year, if I decide to revisit it again, I might change. I might have seen Beetlejuice by then, and I might have switched some out, or I might have seen one of the ones that isn't on the list again that I hadn't watched for a while and thought, okay, this is pretty decent. Or watched one of the ones that's on my list that says, I'm not so big of a fan of it anymore, or move them around, whatever. Originally, I was going to probably do this list right around the time when Beetlejuice came out back in September, but never got around to it. So I figured I'd do it as part of the 13 Days of Halloween. And my kitty left me. Oh, he's still up here. There he is. He might come back down and make an appearance. But he's been directing since 1985. Started out in the Disney animation ward at Disney and Walt Disney, and worked on the Fox and the Hound. But he couldn't stand drawing these cute and cuddly little things. Made some friends along the way, and then broke out with his first movie, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and had formed a really good partnership with musician Danny Elfman, lead singer of Oingo Boingo, who has basically scored most every one of Tim Burton's. Not all of them. I think there's at least 2 that I know of that he didn't score, but I think he scored the rest of them. Don't quote me on that, though, but I think he's very close on that. Now, one other thing I want to preface this also, The Nightmare Before Christmas is not on this list because Tim Burton did not direct Nightmare Before Christmas. Yes, I know it says Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, but Tim Burton did not direct Nightmare Before Christmas. Henry Selick did, who was one of his friends from Disney. Henry Selick has gone on and he directed Coraline and James and the Giant Peach as well. But the reason for Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas is when he wanted it done, Tim Burton was the hottest director out there. He had done Batman and Edward Scissorhands and was working on Batman Returns sequel, had, Beetlejuice and Pee-wee's Big Adventure, all that. So he was one of the hottest directors out there. So in order to get people to come see this bizarre movie, once they saw it, they said, why don't we put Tim Burton's name on it? Didn't quite work since Nightmare Before Christmas and ended up breaking even. But it took a while, as always, for films to become cult status, to become a cult status film. I cannot recommend this enough. If you have Netflix, type in The Movies That Made Us. It is a documentary series, only lasted 3 seasons. It's only about, I don't know, maybe 12 episodes, if that, where they do a really good behind-the-scenes look at variety of movies. And Nightmare Before Christmas was one of them. So you can learn all about the actual history about that. But Nightmare Before Christmas is not on this list since Tim Burton did not direct it. These are only movies that Tim Burton directed. And Nightmare Before Christmas, while he wrote the storybook that it was based on, he co-wrote the script with Caroline Thompson, and he was the one that he was a producer of it, and he was also the one that gave his artistic okay for it. But he's in the middle of doing Batman Returns. That's why he didn't direct it. He would have if he wasn't doing this, but he had the best offer laid out to him is that he was allowed by Warner Brothers to do his Batman movie. The original Batman movie was dictated by Warner Brothers to do this and that, but Tim wanted to do his version of it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. So yes, I picked 10 films and then a honorable mention, like I always do when I do my list shows. Again, this is my opinion. This is my picks, the ones that I like, the order that I like them in. So you may disagree with me. You may think I'm crazy. You may be mad at me that I forgot a movie that you liked. And again, I'm prefacing, I haven't seen Beetlejuice, so that's not on the list at all. I'm going to cut that right there. But if you want to comment, you can. If you want to do a response video, you can, but this is my list and it's my opinion, and that's all that really matters. You can have your opinion, and I'm not going to disagree with you. You can disagree with me, sure. I can disagree with you, but in the end, it's your opinion, and it's my opinion. This is my opinion. And as I said, it's a fluid list. It could be completely different in 3, 4, 5 years as well. So let's begin, shall we? Honorable mention goes to Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which is a film that not a lot of people saw. It did decent in the movie theater, in the box office. I went and saw it in the movie theater. It's based on a series of books that I read the first one. Did I read the second one? I don't think I read the second one. I just read the first one. And Tim Burton did his adaptation of it. And I think this is one of the ones that Tim Burton did not that Danny Elfman did not do the music for. But Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children is a unique film in the oeuvre of Tim Burton. It's one of the ones where he really doesn't. Well, no, that's not exactly true. Ava Green, who was in a couple of his movies, is in this one also. But there's no Johnny Depp. There's no Helena Bonham Carter. There's no Michael Keaton. So this is just a whole different sort of cast he was working with. And it's the first time he ever worked, and the only time he ever worked with Samuel L. Jackson. And Samuel L. Jackson is absolutely perfect as the bad guy in this one. And it's phenomenal. I like it. I'm not in love with it. That's why it's not in my top 10, but it's in my honorable mention. And it does do justice to the book, in my opinion. The premise of the book, and consequently the movie as well, is that the author of the book found a box of these weird pictures of just weird, bizarre people, children, doing weird, bizarre things. And he wrote a story about them, talking about like a Hogwarts type of school for them, that we find out in the movie and in the book that is sort of trapped in a time loop sort of thing. And as they're stuck in their time loop, time around it progresses. So the movie takes place in modern times, but the main character, I forget who plays the lead in that. That's another thing I do. I'm not 100% fully prepared all the time. I like to go by the by the cuff. So Miss Peregrine's. It's a dude from Sex Education. Asa Butterfield, Ella Purnell was in it. Oh, I'm going to have to rewatch that. Ava Green, Samuel L. Jackson, Judi Dench, Rupert Everett, Allison Janney, Terrence Stamp. Kim Dickens, Olan Jones. So there's all. I feel like I'm missing somebody, but no, that's the cast. Again, I did not know Ella Purnell was that. That's interesting. Okay, that's his grandfather was Terrence Stamp. Okay, gotcha. All right. So he goes off on his own and discovers this time loop, and the house for peculiar children is stuck in like 1945-ish or whatever, and they know that a specific time that a bomb is going to be dropped on the house, and they have to be inside the house in order for the loop to start again. So they keep living their lives, and they know they're in a loop, but they can't really go outside of the loop, because if they do, I think they die or something like that. So it's a weird kind of film, but it's very interesting, and it's a very good decision for Tim Burton, and it didn't do well enough that you can get the other books in the series done. It did set up a potential for a sequel, but it did not do well enough at the box office that it did not warrant a sequel, though it would have been interesting to see what Tim Burton would have done with a sequel, but I think by now it is too late. It's 2016, so it's been 8 years since the movie came out, so all the actors have moved on, gotten older, and it wouldn't work anymore. So they'd have to probably restart it or reboot it or whatever. But it's still an entertaining film. And now that I know Ella Purnell was in it, I'll have to double check that one and rewatch that sometime. So that was my honorable mention, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Number 10 might surprise some people. I actually enjoyed his adaptation of Sweeney Todd, the musical. That is an actual Broadway musical. Stars Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, Alan Rickman. Sacha Baron Cohen is in it as well, and also the guy from Harry Potter who played the guy who turned into the rat. He's in that as well. And it's the perfect musical for Tim Burton to make. Because of the story idea, it fits his sort of personality as well. The fact is, it's about a barber who's accused of a crime that he didn't commit and thrown in prison. Meanwhile, his wife, who is coveted by this judge played by Alan Rickman, is, I think, gets raped or is Alan Rickman forces himself on her and causes her to go crazy or something because of the stuff he did to her. And then when Johnny Depp comes out of jail, he decides that he needs to get revenge on everybody that's done him wrong. So he opens a haircut place above a meat pie store, and he befriends the woman who runs down there, played by Helena Bonham Carter, who falls in love with Johnny Depp's character. And they detail a plan where they can help each other because her business is failing because the meat isn't coming in there. Johnny Depp will kill people that he feels are getting away with stuff they shouldn't, and then they'll create a contraption to send the body down to the meat pie shop where she can turn the dead humans into meat pies. That's the actual story for the script, for the musical. And it is, and Johnny Depp can sing, Helena Bonham Carter can sing, Alan Rickman can sing, Sacha Baron Cohen can sing. Is an absolutely wonderful musical, but it's also a very Tim Burton-esque musical. Again, I don't think Danny Elfman did the music for this one because of the actual play. The musical itself has its own score and stuff like that. I don't think Danny worked on that. But it's shot with this almost in a black and white, even though it isn't. It's a filter that sort of puts it into a gray, black and whitish sort of thing, though it's technically color. even though there's an absence of color, which is done deliberately, I would assume, except for some of the blood that comes out. And even then, I think the blood isn't a scarlet red. It's more of a darkish hue, which is what blood actually kind of is. But it's not a fun musical. The songs are great. The cast does a great job singing. And it's done very well. I think Tim Burton got a bunch of nominations for this movie. Didn't win any, but it was definitely considered one of the better films of when it came out. So my daughter's been dying to see it, so I think I might need to show it to her sometime. And again, a lot of these I haven't seen in a while, or I have seen them, but I kind of need to refresh my memory on some of these. Number 9 finds us with, I guess it's not really his biggest misfire. That would probably be the Planet of the Apes remake, even though that does have some moments in it. That's not on my list. This is Mars Attacks, 1996. It came out the same year as Independence Day. It came out in December. Did nothing. It tanked. It was a one of these disaster films with a huge cast of characters. Jack Nicholson playing 2 characters, including President of the United States. Danny DeVito, Glenn Close playing the First Lady and married to Jack Nicholson as the president. And then, what's her name? Annette Bening is married to Jack Nicholson's other character, who is a Vegas casino owner. And then you also get Natalie Portman is the daughter of the president and the first lady. Martin Short is his chief of staff. Michael J. Fox is a news reporter who's married to Sarah Jessica Parker, who is or they're not married, they're dating, I think, who is before social media, she would have been a social media person. She has her own show that she talks about fashion and stuff like that. Pierce Brosnan is the scientist that they call in to look at the aliens. Jack Black has a scenario in it, and there's a whole ton of other cameos in it as well. And lead roles, Jim Brown and Foxy Brown herself is in it. I gotta give her credit because she's great in this as well. Pam Grier. Jim Brown and Pam Grier are married. Ray J's in it. Rod Steiger, Joe Don Baker, Paul Winfield. Olan Jones is another character that's always in his stuff. Frank Welker does the voices of the aliens. Rance Howard, Ron Howard's father, is in it. Willie Garson is in it. Let me go up here further. Christina Applegate, Tom Jones, Sylvia Sidney in her last film. Lucas Haas is kind of the main character in this one. Lisa Marie, who at the time was married to Tim Burton, or they were dating or something like that. But it's an all-star cast, and it came out, as I said, the same year as Independence Day. Independence Day had already destroyed box office in the summer. This came out in the winter. Mars Attacks is based on a card series from the 50s with these weird bulbous head-looking aliens who go yak, yak, yak. And they're all computer-generated. And I love the design of the aliens in this movie. I love the design of it. I love the design of their spaceships because Tim Burton is a fan of the card series, so he uses bits from the card series in his movie. And just, it is a insane, absolutely crazy film that the reason why it's not higher on my list is there's some aspects of it, like near the end, that I'm not the biggest fan of. But it's got one of the best endings on how they kill the aliens. It's so funny. It's better than giving it a virus and then blowing up the ship this way. With how they kill these aliens is outstanding. I'm not going to ruin it for you. It is one of these most bizarre movies you've ever seen. I saw it in the movie theater like just days before it was getting ready to leave the movie theaters. I was the only one in the theater. It might have been one other person there. And I enjoyed it, but as I said, there are certain aspects and parts to it that I'm just sort of like, eh. But it is absolute. It's just unvarnished carnage. It's Tim Burton just letting loose and doing his crazy thing, and a bunch of big actors, and they're all kind of big actors. Pierce Brosnan was still James Bond at that time, and Jack Nicholson is still Jack Nicholson. Glenn Close still Glenn Close. Michael J. Fox is still Michael J. Fox. Sarah Jessica Parker still just it's they've got a huge, and then he delves into the past with the rest of the cast, and Danny DeVito's in it, and Tom Jones, and all this stuff. And and seeing Jack Nicholson play two different characters is hilarious. Martin Short plays a sleazy character. You've never really seen Martin Short play sleazy before, and he does play absolutely sleazy in this, and he's phenomenal in it as well. There's variations on Dr. Strangelove. There's some sequences in there. There's some great lines in the movie. And just I think that my favorite line is, and this is kind of a mini spoiler, but the aliens have a meeting with both houses of Congress, and they think it's going to be talking about peace and stuff like that. But the alien pulls out a ray gun and kills everybody in Congress. And Sylvia Sidney, who's this old lady who's got like dementia, cracks up and goes, "They killed Congress." And just the way she's cackled, she's like, it's a great sequence. And a very young Jack Black, who's almost unrecognizable. He's a douchebag and he doesn't last long. Michael J. Fox is a small cameo, but he plays another character who kind of deserves his fate. He's a narcissistic sort of newspaper reporter or a television news reporter who's obsessed with his hair. It's just so you get a chance. Tim Burton's able to get a chance to have these actors play roles that they're maybe not quite used to playing. There's some changes. Danny DeVito is Danny DeVito in this movie, so you really can't, say that that's completely different. But it's just freaking hilarious, and is one of the most bizarre movies you'll ever see. And I love, as I said, I'm going to keep coming back. I love the design of the Martian aliens. They're so fantastic. It's a parody of B movies from the 1950s and 60s. And if you think of it in that way, the movie goes down a little better. If you think of it as trying to be a serious science fiction film like an Independence Day light, it's not going to work for you. You've got to think of this as a straight up adaptation of a card series and an homage to B science fiction movies from the 1950s. If you think in that general direction, you're going to have a great time at this movie. Again, it's number 9 because I have some issues with some of the scenes later on that I'm not the biggest fan of. That to me seem to drag the movie down a little bit. But and they're just weird for weird's sake, So I just, it's hard to say, but why it is this, but I love Mars Attacks. I love this bizarreness. And as I said, if you get into the mindset that you're watching an homage to B movie science fictions films, this is great. Now, couple stories about this before I get moving on there. First of all, this came on the heels of a second straight flop for Tim Burton, which is a shame because I'm going to talk about the previous one that became a flop. And then before that, his Batman Returns didn't do as well as the original Batman did. It did okay because they wanted him back for the third one, but he refused. He didn't want to do it. Tim Burton was in danger of being maybe phased out of the movie world because you have a couple of stinkers. People start, the film companies start saying, okay, there's something wrong with him. We shouldn't greenlight more of his stuff. And 3 years later, I'm going to talk about this movie later too. It's on my list. He has a straight up big hit. And then 2 more years after that, he's got another big hit that I'm not going to talk about either because it's not on my list. And then after that, he gets into another sort of flop, which is a shame because it's on my list as well. and we'll talk about that too. And then he enters this Johnny Depp era where he tends to do, pretty decent with stuff. And then he gets Alice in Wonderland, which is not in my list. That becomes a huge, massive billion-dollar hit for him. And so he's able to continue doing what he likes to do. So it's a great thing. But Mars Attacks came at a time where he needed a hit and he didn't get one. And things were looking bleak for him, but he was able to move on from that. One other thing real quick is I remember that summer when they were filming in Washington, D.C., maybe not 96, but summer 95, I guess, or spring of 95 or spring of 96, whenever it was, when they were still filming in Washington, D.C., because they did film on location in Washington, D.C. I was in Washington with my sister and brother-in-law. We were going to the Smithsonian. I was there for a visit. I was staying at their house or something like that, their apartment, and just going there for a visit. No, it was their townhouse. We went to the baseball game and stuff like that, I think. And we saw parts of the set. I didn't know what it was at first. I found out later that it was part of this movie. So Mars Attacks is number 9. Number 8 is Batman Returns. I'm a comic book guy. I was one of the guys that when they announced Michael Keaton as Batman back in 88, 89, I said, oh, Jesus Christ, they're going to go do the Adam West way, because at that time, Michael Keaton was mostly known for comedies. He had just come off of Beetlejuice with Tim Burton. And so everybody was like, oh, he's working with Tim Burton again because they just did Beetlejuice and it was popular. And then, so I was one of the guys that wrote the letter and says, this is ridiculous. Warner Brothers, what are you doing? You're a moron. Cast somebody else because we want a darker Batman. And then I saw Clean and Sober. I was like, oh. And then I saw Batman and I was like, oh. So I was wrong, and I've done mea culpas for it before. I'm going to do another one now because I'm getting ready to tear this one up a little bit. As I said, I like Mars Attacks, and maybe I should have moved Mars Attacks ahead of this one, but because I am a comic book guy, and this movie does have a lot of good stuff in it, it's where it is at number 8. What's good about it? I like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. I think she's phenomenal. I think she's probably the best casting of the movie, with the exception of Michael Keaton and Michael Gough as Alfred and Batman in general. I think I was excited when they cast Danny DeVito as the Penguin, but I was not expecting Tim Burton's Penguin, and that is one of the reasons why this movie puts me off a little bit. I get where Tim's going with it. I know why he's doing it. It's his way of doing things. It's his macabre way of looking at things. It's his view on stuff. But I despised his version of the Penguin. I think if we would have just played Danny DeVito as the way Colin Farrell is playing it right now, as a legitimate criminal mastermind like the Kingpin is in Daredevil, a guy that we know is a criminal, but he's also running legitimate business. And he doesn't have to do the wah, wah, wah stuff like that. But I think Danny DeVito would have been absolutely perfect as a sort of mobster Penguin. Now, I also understand why you don't want to do that, because it's not visually exciting to see a mobster Penguin. You want to see a grotesque Penguin-looking human, and that's what we get. And I guess that's fine when he's in his top hat and his suit. It's pretty decent, but he spends a lot of his time in his long underwear. He's also very sexual, which is Danny DeVito's forte. And in a PG-13 kind of kids movie, the sort of sexual innuendo that Danny DeVito plays in this movie is really off-putting and really doesn't belong, in my opinion, in a Batman movie. You can do sexual tension, stuff like that, but this is overt sexual talk and stuff like that made me cringe a little bit. And when he bites off the nose of one of the people that he's working with, that throws me off a little bit. And just how he's just like I think it's Jan Hooks, but I'm not sure if it is, but he's just looking her up and down and like licking his lips like he wants to just pound her ass, it's just uncomfortable. But when he's in his element, he's wearing the suit and the top hat and the monocle, and he's got the cane, and he does that. And there's a couple sequences where he does that in the movie. It's decent Penguin version. But then they also throw in this stupid version where Penguin breaks into the Batmobile, which should be almost impossible to do, and takes control of it, and he turns it into a carnival game, which was really, really dumb as well. Christopher Walken is a great actor, but to throw him in this movie as well as another villain, to make it 3 straight villains, even though he's not a Batman villain per se, sort of throws off things a little bit too. He's good in it, but again, his character seems kind of useless. I understand, again, why he's there and stuff like that, and it all makes sense, but I find it kind of useless. The Penguin's revenge is decent. Kidnapping the firstborn children of all the rich people in Gotham, that sort of makes sense considering his history. Those are things I was not a big fan of. But again, Michelle Pfeiffer, oh my God, was phenomenal as Catwoman. Her chemistry with Michael Keaton is palpable. They dated at one point, so you can sort of understand where that's coming from. The sequence where they're making out on the couch with the giant fireplace is amazing. And then when she's in her skin tight outfit doing the whipping and the kicking and the stuff like that, awesome. When she's using that whip, it's great. Now there's a few things where Batman throws some sort of gel on her when she's trying to climb up a rooftop and she keeps slipping. That's kind of stupid. But Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman is outstanding. We've had decent Catwomans. Anne Hathaway's Catwoman is also a decent one also. And not just because I like Anne Hathaway, it's because she's actually decent in Nolan's Batman trilogy. But to me, I love you, Anne, but to me, Michelle Pfeiffer is the best version of Catwoman we have seen, even better than the ones that were great in the Adam West show. They were great as well, Eartha Kitt, all of them as well. But I love Michelle Pfeiffer's version of it. I love it's set at Christmas time with the snow, and the stories coming out is that Tim kept the studio at winter temperatures, so you get the breath coming out of them as they're talking, and they're wearing the actual outfits, and the snow is actually kind of snow and ice to keep that up, that this is actually taking place during Christmas in the winter. And that's even crazier too, is that Gotham City is a lot different in this one than it was in the first one. And unfortunately, to me, it looks more set-like in this one. Now, it had set-like qualities in the first one, but in Batman Returns, it just seems more set-like because the majority of the film takes place at night. There's a few day scenes here and there, but the original Batman had a lot more kind of day scenes going on with that, whereas this one is just pretty much all night, which again makes sense. Batman at night, so on and so forth. The clowns, the carnival of crime. Okay. Again, another set of villains we probably didn't need, but it makes sense that the Penguin is the leader of that because we learn about his history. They were okay, I guess, but there's a lot wrong with it. But there's a lot of visually stunning aspects to it, and Michelle Pfeiffer's performance. Michael Keaton still does an excellent job as well. And as I said, I like certain aspects of Danny DeVito's role as Penguin, but the majority of it, to me, I'm not a big fan of. And Christopher Walken, again, decent, but his character really is useless in the movie for the most part. You don't get Robert Wool's newspaper reporter, which is fine. You probably don't need that, actually. You already did all that in the first one. But sometimes it would have been nice to maybe check in with the normal people instead of keeping an eye on the freaks that we have. Again, the movie itself is okay, but I will say this, and then I'll move on to the next one. It has again, one of my most favorite shots in movie history ever. And I should probably do a top 10 list of those. Oh, maybe that's a good idea. Top movie shots of all time. That could be a little bit of a struggle because it's hard to, and I don't have the expertise to say, look at this, and then have it appear in that box right in this area here. But this one is pretty easy to describe, and you can probably find it on YouTube. And it is one of my apps. And I think there's actually, if you go to the gift bar on Twitter, you can, if type in Batman Returns like that, it'll pop up and you can see it. Basically, I love at the beginning of the movie where they turn the bat signal on when the circus of crime comes in and starts terrorizing Gotham City. They turn the bat signal on and reflects off of all these mirrors that are placed all over Gotham, and then it beams it into Wayne Manor. And before it does that, we go to Wayne Manor and we see Michael Keaton brooding in the dark because that's what he does. He's Batman. He's got the look on. Michael Keaton has got the look on. And then the bat signal flares up in his house and he stands up, and the upper shot that Tim shoots of Michael standing with the bat signal behind him is absolutely phenomenal. Let me see if I can get, I want to see if I can get a picture of it. I know they have a GIF of it on Twitter. So let me just type it in here. Batman Returns. Yeah, there it is right there. That one right there is one of the best shots ever done in a movie, in my opinion. And that's Tim Burton for you doing that. So Batman Returns, number 8. Number 7, we find Ed Wood. Again, I probably should have put this further up on the list because I really enjoy Ed Wood. I think I know why I have the one at number 6. I'm going to talk about that when I get there. But I love Ed Wood. Another one that doesn't have a Tim Burton, Danny Elfman score. Let me go back to the Batman Returns score by Danny Elfman's phenomenal. It's fantastic. Danny's musical score for Mars Attacks is also perfect as well. Ed Wood, though, was done by Howard Shore. He did the music by Howard Shore because Danny and Tim at the time were kind of at odds with each other because of Nightmare Before Christmas. If you watch, as I said, go to Netflix if you have Netflix and watch Movies That Made Us and watch the behind the scenes of Nightmare Before Christmas. You know that there's a thing where Danny wanted to do the talking voice of Jack Skellington as well as a singing voice, but it turned out that Tim had to fire him from the talking voice and he kept the singing voice in. And there might be some other stuff that came up between them. They solved it, obviously, because after Ed Wood, he went on and did Mars Attacks, which came out after Ed Wood. So they got Howard Shore to do the music for Ed Wood. Howard Shore is the one who did the music for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So you get a decent score from this. It's not a Danny Elfman score. And honestly, I think that works better that it isn't a Danny one, because at that time in the mid-90s, Danny still had his specific way of doing things with his chorus and his symphonics and stuff like that. And that doesn't quite fit for a film set in the 1960s about a transvestite director making the worst movie of all time. And that's what makes it so great, is that the movie, that's what it's about. It's about Ed Wood, who's considered to be one of the worst directors in Hollywood history. And we see his life from where he begins work on his movies leading up to Ed Wood and the whole thing about with Ed Wood and his friendship with I used to know this, the guy who played Dracula. Oh my God. He's played by Martin Landau, but he plays Bela Lugosi. That's right, Bela Lugosi. So the movie basically is the friendship between Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi. Johnny Depp as Ed Wood is phenomenal. He just worked with Tim on Edward Scissorhands previous to this movie. and had a good rapport with them. So he was cast. He's perfectly cast as Ed Wood. Martin Landau won an Oscar for his portrayal of Bela Lugosi in this movie, where Bela Lugosi, it's a perfect view of a former, wasn't a big star, but his Dracula is one of the most iconic Draculas out there, and how drug addiction drug him down into the pit of despair, and in turn helped create. He was like the first celebrity to ever enter rehab. So that's what his big historical, and that's what this movie is sort of focusing on, because up to that point, celebrities didn't do that, but Martin Landau did, and because he had a heroin issue. And but it was Ed Wood as played by Johnny Depp. They do not step away from the transvestite life where he wants to wear women's clothing. That's one of the main basis of his character. And to have removed that from the movie would have been a sin. They didn't. They didn't. Don't be screaming. They actually focus on it as they actually should. They don't take advantage of it, but they show it as, and they don't show it maybe as much as maybe he might have done it, but they do have it as a main character point in the movie. And it's perfect. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's what it was. Back in the 60s, it wasn't considered normal. It still isn't considered normal for the most part if you want to be serious about it, even though it should be. It's not, but we're not going to get into politics or like that. Regardless. So, but what's mainly cool about Ed Wood is he's got this thing for women's clothing, but he's also got this exuberant personality, absolutely loves filmmaking, loves being a filmmaker, wants to make movies, and has so many ideas, and even when he gets rejected, he still keeps himself, upbeat about stuff. And then he becomes friends with Bela Lugosi, which he thinks is the coolest thing in the world because it's Dracula. He's one of the coolest actors from the 1930s and 40s, and I'm friends with him. He wants to hang out with me, and that's so cool. And Johnny Depp just shows all of that perfectly in this role. Johnny Depp should have also at least got an Oscar nom for this because he is so good in this as well. And don't get me wrong, Martin Landau's Bela Lugosi is absolutely astounding. He's got the look, he's got the voice. It's Martin Landau. He is a prepared actor who knows his shit, did his research, did what he needed to do, and played the role perfectly and got an Oscar for it, which he absolutely should have. And it is, while it is a celebration of filmmaking, and the fact that it's filmed in black and white is amazing also, because it gives that feel, because Ed Wood's movies were filmed in black and white. In 1960s and 50s, black and white film was not strange at all. It was normal. It was the norm. Color was starting to make its way in there a little bit more, but people still liked using black and white, and it's an absolute perfect. It's shot in California. It makes you feel like you're in the 1960s. You're taking a look back in time to see what's going on, and just the set designs, the way Burton shoots it, the way he uses the black and white, the way the actors act, the clothing, the set designs, everything. It is an absolutely perfect film. Now, again, reason why it's number 7, I probably think I should move it up to number 6 or number 5. But the reason why I said there is that it can get a little heavy at times, but that's the point. It's not supposed to be an enjoyable, frolicking rollick into moviedom. It's a part of movie history, looking at someone considered to be one of the worst directors of all time. And it's shot so beautifully. And Ed Wood is also the guy that has part con man in him also, which is outstanding. And as I said, Johnny Depp absolutely deserved an accolade. He might have, I don't even know off the top of my head if he got nominated for this, but he should have. And let's take a look at this also. There are a bunch of regular Burton this is Johnny Depp's second movie with him. This is Martin Landau's first one. He did a couple other ones with him as well. Bill Murray's in this, playing a gay character who wants to become a woman named Bunny Breckenridge. Bill Murray's fantastic in this movie. He's almost unrecognizable as Bill Murray, and he's so good at it. Sarah Jessica Parker, this is her first time with Tim Burton, and she absolutely kills her role as Ed Wood's put upon girlfriend, who at one point is just can't stand his wanting to dress up as a woman, because remember, this is still 1960s. It wasn't considered a good thing, a normal thing to do that. And she stuck with him because she loved him, but it got to a certain point where it's too much for her and she couldn't handle it. And it doesn't make her the villain. It just makes her normal for that time frame. Lisa Marie, who was dating again or married to Tim Burton at that time, plays Vampira, who is the grandmother of Elvira. Conrad Brooks, who was actually in the Ed Wood movies, has a cameo in this as well. Patricia Arquette plays the second love interest of Ed Wood. She's really good in it also. Jeffrey Jones, his pedophilia stuff aside, is excellent as Criswell. He's great in this too. And then you have Max Casella from Doogie Howser playing a great role in it. Juliet Landau, who is Martin Landau's daughter, is also in this, and she goes on to play Drusilla in the Buffy movies. Vincent D'Onofrio makes a cameo as Orson Welles, which is absolutely amazing casting. G.D. Spradlin as Reverend Lemon is fantastic. G.D. Spradlin's from The Godfather, y'all. Rance Howard again. He's in a lot of Tim Burton stuff. Is in that too. And Melora Walters, Bill Cusack, Matthew Barry, who is another person from the Ed Wood stuff. A lot of Ed Wood's guys are in this as well, and having cameos. And it's just such a wonderful film. And the more and more I think about it, I probably should have moved it further up than number 7. But Ed Wood is amazing film and is unlike really anything you've ever seen. This is kind of the first thing that you start seeing that Tim Burton could do more, because up to this point he'd done what? Pee-wee, Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns, and then this movie. And then he had a hand in Nightmare Before Christmas. So all those movies before this one, they're Tim Burton movies. You can make the case, yeah, I get it. This is what he does. This is his thing. Then you get to this movie, and it's like, holy shit, he's an actual filmmaker. And the character, yes, fits into his sensibilities, but there is not a Tim Burton-esque flourish in this movie. This movie is played straight. It's a biopic of a real person, and it's amazing. Ed Wood is number 7. Now, the reason why I put this one at number 6 is due mostly to the creativity, the originality of it, even somewhat the casting somewhat. But the thing that really, and the set design is amazing, but what really does it for me is, in my opinion, this movie has the greatest Danny Elfman score of all time. It's Edward Scissorhands. This is the first movie that Johnny Depp worked with Tim Burton on, started their relationship there. Winona Ryder, who had been in Beetlejuice, this is her second time working with Tim Burton, and she's almost like the perfect actress to work with Tim Burton. You throw in, he's able to work with his hero, Vincent Price. Before he passed away, Tim Burton was able to make a movie with his idol. And I cannot imagine the ecstatic, just schoolboy, just crush on your idol is doing a movie, doing words from your script along with Caroline Thompson, and you're telling him what to do and he's doing it. It must have been absolutely insane for Tim Burton. Alan Arkin's in it, who is always a good Anthony Michael Hall, who really hadn't done much, and unfortunately I hate his character. I'm supposed to, but it's a shame because Anthony Michael Hall would have been good as maybe another role, but I hate his character, and you're supposed to. Diane Wiest is in it. Kathy Baker, Conchata Farrell, Olan Jones again is like in all of his stuff. So just it's as I said, it's Danny Elfman's score that absolutely kills it for me for this movie. That and the set design. It's a fairy tale. And the opening sequence has an aged Winona Ryder, who is a grandmother at this point, tucking her granddaughter in bed, and Danny Elfman's ethereal sort of score in the background. She's telling her granddaughter a story, and it's snowing outside. And the granddaughter asks, "How is it snowing? Why? What is the snow made of?" And Winona goes on to tell the story, and we go back and we go in, and there's a typical California cookie cutter neighborhood that Tim Burton grew up in. And basically, this is like one of his most personal films. And Caroline Thompson did a phenomenal job of writing what he wanted it. But it sets the it's set in the oh, you need your book. Okay. You're fine. It's set in a neighborhood that Tim Burton grew up in. That's sort of what, if you learn about Tim Burton, you learn that he grew up in one of these cookie cutter California neighborhoods where everything is the same. Everything is so normal. And that's why he became how he became, because he's not normal. And he couldn't stand the fact that everything was so goddamn normal. So he decides to rectify that by having the movie take place in a similar neighborhood. But because it is a fairy tale, you have the neighborhood, and then boom, you have a giant fucking castle just at the end of the cul-de-sac with all these manicured bushes and stuff like that. You're like, what the fuck is this? I think Gary Oldman, had was up for a role in that, and he read the script, and he's like, I think he was up for Alan Arkin's role, actually. He was like, what the fuck am I reading? There's a fucking castle at the end of a neighborhood? This is stupid. This is like one of the worst movies I've ever seen or ever heard of. So he threw the script away, and then he saw the movie, and he goes, oh God. And he's like, that would have been a fun movie to be in. I'm not making that up. I just saw that. I literally just saw that interview about a week or so ago, where they were asking, hey, was there any movie that you were mad that you turned down? And talked about the Edward answer as I just told you. And so what we do then is Diane Weiss goes up. She's a what do you call those? Not cover girl, an Avon lady, because they had those back in the early 90s still. And probably, again, when Tim Burton was growing up, they probably had Avon back then as well. I know they did. So she goes up to the castle because no one's ever gone up there before. And you see all these gorgeous manicured topiaries. And she goes up, and it's an abandoned castle. It looks like there's nobody there. And then finally we see Edward. He's in shadow, and she's like, oh, what can I do for you? And then he comes out of shadow, pale, dark hair, and the scissor hands. And Diane Weiss is taken aback for just a second. But then she's like, are you here by yourself? And he's like, and he's so young. He's like, yes, he's talking. He doesn't have any interaction with anybody. Says, I'm going to take you home with me. So she takes him home, and that spirals the story as he tries to, again, Tim Burton looks like he's trying to say, I'm the weird kid who was brought up in a bizarre cookie cutter normie neighborhood that just fucking killed me and made me the way I am. And he's sort of doing this where they take a guy who's been in his own little world to bring him into the real world, and he's not normal, and he doesn't like it until he meets Winona Ryder's character, who's Diane Weiss's daughter. And the two of them, of course, start off a little at odds with each other, but slowly she sees the pain and the childlike essence of him. And then he tries to, he tries to fit in by, he cuts the neighborhood ladies' hairs and makes these gorgeous haircuts. He cuts their dog's hair, so they have these gorgeous haircuts. So they start liking him a lot. And then in one of the greatest, again, Danny Elfman score, Ice Dance, look it up, go to YouTube, type in Ice Dance Danny Elfman, and just listen to the ethereal music that comes out of it. and it has him cutting an ice sculpture of Winona Ryder's character while she's dancing, and all the ice, because he's real fast, and all the ice is flowing like snow, and she's dancing in it, and then he accidentally clips her with the scissors and cuts her finger. Anthony Michael Hall, who was Winona Ryder's boyfriend, who was getting kind of rejected because she's been spending more time with Edward and hates Edward because he's not normal. He's the bully, says, oh my God, you just tried to kill her. So you're a freak. We're going to kill you. And then other stuff starts happening. And then all this shit just comes down on Edward, and he's got to escape. But now the whole town is after him. I can't tell you how it happens. It's a progression that leads to the point where he gets ostracized from the town, but it's more than ostracized. They want to fucking kill him. And that's not right, because Edward did nothing wrong. And that's what Tim and Caroline were trying to say. Tim, and I think Caroline had a lot of discussions with Tim, and a lot of this is Tim Burton's personal stuff, and Caroline got that, and so made this into what it is. And the final song, where we revert back to where Winona Ryder as the older lady is telling the story about the snow, and again, type in grand finale Edward Scissorhands score, it'll give you chills. And it pans out as she's remembering Edward, and you see her flashing back to when she's younger, dancing in the ice, and you roll out of the house in another gorgeous shot, and you see that the snow is coming from the castle where Edward is still alive, which I can't explain why people think he's dead, but that's something you have to see for yourself. And he's been cutting all these ice sculptures, and all the ice is flowing out, and that's what's causing the snow. And then you have grand finale, Danny Elfman's score is chills, beautiful, and that's why I put it number 6 ahead of Ed Wood. Now I put number 5, I put Pee-wee's Big Adventure number 5 because it came out in 1985. I was 12 years old, and it was my jam. It was like a movie I had never seen before. And it is totally unlike Tim Burton. It is the funniest, but at the same time is kind of like Tim Burton. Paul Rubens, who also has a cameo in Batman Returns, was highly intelligent. He knew people. He just knew things. And he was at the pinnacle. He was a stand-up comedian. He had his own show going on. Phil Hartman was a part of his group, the acting group that they did. And this character was just starting to skyrocket. So, the film companies were seeing how well his stand-up stuff was doing and the popularity of the stuff. So they said, we got to get him into a movie. And Paul's like, you're damn right you got to. And this is who I want to do it, because he knew about Tim Burton and been seeing that. And I also want Danny Elfman to do the score for it. And Danny Elfman had never done a score before. This is Tim Burton's first real movie. He had done some short films, and I think Paul saw those and was like, this guy's a genius. He just needs the right thing. And Pee-wee's world and Pee-wee's Big Adventure is almost the complete opposite of what Tim Burton is expected. Tim Burton, you expect the blacks and the darks and stuff like that, and the grays. And this is popping color. He's got the lighter gray suit on, but he's got the red bow tie and all this stuff. So he's got the splashes of color. His house is just full of whimsy. A grown child with all kinds of stuffed animals and dinosaurs and toys and trains and devices that make your breakfast for you. And he's acting like a kid, and it is absolutely insane. And it's absolutely so much fucking fun. And for a 12-year-old kid, that was so cool. And I love the movie. And then you go, it turns into a road trip movie. Again, nothing real Tim Burton-esque about that till you get to some of the dream sequences, which is very Tim Burton-esque, which give him a chance to strut his stuff a little bit. And then you get to one of the best endings of any movie ever, which is the chase thing through Warner Brothers Studios, where Pee-wee is being pursued by members of the WB security. You have to see the movie to figure out why. And he goes through different films all the time, and just it is one of the funniest movies endings, and is very reminiscent of the ending of Blazing Saddles. And I'm sure it's an homage sort of to that because Blazing Saddles came first. But what Pee-wee did with it, he increased what Mel Brooks did with Blazing Saddles is phenomenal, was great, and is absolutely perfect. Pee-wee brought it up to another level and made it that more. And then after you think, okay, he's escaped, it's all good, then there's one more obstacle in his course. And he doesn't have to do anything, but because he's Pee Wee Herman and he's a good person, he ends up doing this one last good thing. I'm not going to tell you what it is if you haven't seen the movie. If you have, you know what I'm talking about. It's not what you consider to be a Tim Burton film, but in the end, it kind of is. You know what I'm kind of saying? It kind of is because of the insanity of it, because of the craziness of it. But it's also, it's not. But it has aspects of it. It's hard to really describe because it is such a great film. Even now, at 52 years old, am I 52? No, 52 next year. You can hear yourself, son. I'm 51 years old. Now, 51 years old. Thinking back to 1985, that 12-year-old kid loving this movie and then watching it over and over again when I could. And I watched it recently, maybe about a year or so ago. I think I popped it in there because I was in the mood for something fun and whimsy. And it's stupid funny. It makes no sense whatsoever, but it kind of does. But it's not the epitome of a Tim Burton movie, but it kind of is. And again, Danny Elfman's first ever score for this movie, phenomenal. It's like, oh my God, this guy's a fucking genius. And he does a great job. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is number 5. So Pee-wee's Big Adventure was the first non-Tim Burton-esque movie. His first one he ever did. And it was a huge, massive success. And everyone's like, we kind of like this Tim Burton guy. They knew probably Paul Rubens as Pee-wee was the one that drew a lot of people in there, but they liked what they saw from the movie, and it made it fun. And Paul Rubens raved about it. That's why he loved it so much. So Warner Brothers was like, hey, you know what? What do you got for us? Number 4 is Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is the second movie that he did where we actually get, remember I was saying that Pee-wee is not the epitome of a Tim Burton movie. Beetlejuice is the grandfather, sets the stage for what is the Burton-esque quality of films. The bizarre characters, the dark, moody lighting, the dark humor, the weird special effects with ghosts and creatures and tearing people's faces off, and the Banana Boat song. It's everything thrown together, and Michael Keaton absolutely kills it. He's the glue of the movie, despite the fact only being in about 18 to 20 minutes of the movie. He is the glue of the movie. He is probably the one that steals the scenes. But don't underestimate Catherine O'Hara, Jeffrey Jones again before his pedophilia stuff, Winona Ryder as the dysfunctional family. And then on top of that, you get Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin as the straight people who are trying to, they're your entrance into this whole new world of the afterlife. And a Tim Burton afterlife is absolutely insane, but it kind of makes sense, And the gorgeous set designs, the gorgeous effect shots, the gorgeous music, not really gorgeous. It is the full-on insanity of Beetlejuice brings out the insanity in Danny Elfman's Beetlejuice score. It is an insane score, has some of the best music scores out there. And the Banana Boat sequence is a showstopper and just a amazing cast having a blast in a film that is so freaking bizarre. And it's headlined by Michael Keaton, who absolutely blows everybody away. but is barely in the movie. He blows you so much away, and he's such a big influence on the movie. You think he's in it more. It's only 18 to 20 minutes. The same thing with Beetlejuice. What I heard is he's only in it. He said, I'm only going to be in it if I can have the same amount of screen time, 18 to 20 minutes, because if you do a whole movie about Beetlejuice, it's going to become a little, it's more about the exterior characters, the outliers. And you get it with a great Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin and Catherine O'Hara and Jeffrey Jones and Winona Ryder. You get it. And then the other supporting cast whose names I don't really remember, they are an added bonus to it as well. And it is one of the most bizarre films. But again, it created the Tim Burton mystique, the Burton-esque quality of films, and every other movie of his during the late 80s, early 90s had some sort of correlation aspect of Beetlejuice in it, the way that it's Tim Burton's stylistic way of doing things. And then Tim Burton grew up a little bit and tried different things while still keeping some Burton-esque stuff in there. You got to look at Sleepy Hollow, or you look at Big Fish, or you look at Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It still has a lot of Burton-esque stuff in it, but it's been evolved to a more 21st century sort of sensibility that Tim Burton did not have back in 1988 when this movie came out. So Beetlejuice is number 4. It's so funny. So number 5 was Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is Tim Burton's first movie. Number 4 was Beetlejuice, which is Tim Burton's second movie. Number 3 is Tim Burton's third movie, and put him on the map. Beetlejuice and Pee-wee were good. This movie shot him into the stratosphere. It's Batman. I talked about the sequel already. The 1989 Batman was a event. It was the biggest movie of the year, and it was the summer of Batman. There were Batman T-shirts. The movie was insane. It made a shit ton of money. It had lots of merchandising and stuff like that made a ton of money. And it had the controversy of Michael Keaton being cast as Batman. But it turned out that we didn't need to do that. And then when Jack Nicholson was cast as the Joker, you're like, why is Jack Nicholson slumming it? Because at that time, he's an Oscar-winning actor who's been nothing but he's slumming it as the Joker. And the reason why I said it was because it's a fun film. It's a fun character. He loved playing the Joker. He said it over and over. He says, if I had a top 5 list of my favorite characters, Joker's on there. And he said that in interviews before. He said he absolutely had a blast making the movie. And, you get Kim Basinger in there, and you get a Michael Gough, and you get Robert Wuhl in there, and you get Pat Hingle. And you get that Burton-esque quality of trying to escape from the 1960s cheesy Batman TV show, which everyone first look at Batman is that what they remember him from: the Biffs, the Pals, the Bat-Tusi, the swim trunks, the surfing contest against the Joker, the crazy traps, that he gets saved from at the last minute, sort of weird things, the cliffhanger endings. And it's a cheesy TV show, but it was fun growing up when you're younger. It's like, this is cool. But when I became a comic book fan, and Dark Knight Returns comes out, and Batman Year One, and the Batman in the comics, even the 1970s Batman with Denny O'Neil and stuff like that, that started turning him away from this goofy 1960s sort of comedic sort of character, and rolled it into a dark Knight, which is what people wanted, and he delivered. Now, I have some issues with Batman. That's why it's not higher up. But all in all, 1989, I was 16 years old. So it was absolutely, and I was a comic book fan, and I was working at a comic book store when it came out. So I had all the things ticked off, and I was having the summer of my life, because up to that point, really the only comic book movies we had seen were Howard the Duck and Superman. Those were really the only ones. This really brought comic books to the forefront and sort of started a comic book, sort of the beginning of the comic book stuff. It died out a little bit, rose up a little back in the late 90s with Blade, went back down, and then it hit with X-Men and Spider-Man. Then went down again a little bit, and then the MCU hits. So that's what that is. So Batman is number 3, and I got to get moving because I got 6 minutes before dinner's ready. And I got to talk about the last two, my favorite ones. Number 2, I'm not really going to talk too much about because I did this last night. It's on my top 80 Halloween movies. I talked a lot about this. I'll do a quick little rundown because I do have to get going. Number 2, Sleepy Hollow. 1999. This is the movie that brought Tim Burton back after his 2 flops, which weren't flops because Ed Wood and Mars Attacks are both on my list. They're both great movies. It did not resonate with the audiences. Sleepy Hollow comes out. It becomes a huge hit. It's a homage to Hammer horror films, set designs, costumes set in 1899, the Headless Horseman aspect, Johnny Depp's role as not a teacher, but as a constable who believes in science to solve crimes, but that is unheard of in the era of 1899 police. But he has to go up to Sleepy Hollow, which is one of those small villages. It takes 3 days via horse and carriage to get up there, and it's in the woods, dark creepiness. There's witch stuff in there, and a fantastic cast filled with Christina Ricci, Ian McDiarmid, Michael Gambon, the actress who played I can't think of her name right now, who was in Harry Potter as Rita Skeeter. Jeffrey Jones, the guy who played Dursley in Harry Potter, is also in this also. And Ian McDiarmid, who was the Emperor. And Martin Landau even has a cameo in this as well. Christopher Walken's in it as well. And it's another really great Casper Van Dien. It's another really great atmospheric Halloween-esque feeling, Burton-esque movie. And I watch Sleepy Hollow every Halloween, around Halloween. So I got to watch it within the next couple of days. It's just one of my favorite movies of all time. It was in my top 10 of Halloween movies. It's my number 2 Tim Burton film. And that's all I'm going to say about that because I do have to get moving on. I want to talk about my number 1 here real quick. Number 1 is one you're probably not even going to expect. You're like, well, what could it be? What is left in here? You're never going to get it, so I'll tell you what it is. Number 1 is Big Fish. Big Fish is the best Tim Burton movie of all time, in my humble opinion. No Johnny Depp, but Helena Bonham Carter is in it, but she's phenomenal. She plays 2 roles in it. Ewan McGregor is in it, and he's fantastic. Albert Finney is the older version of Ewan McGregor's character, and he's great in it. Danny DeVito's role is very clever also. I like that a lot also. Tiny Roy, who was his first time working with Tim Burton, and then ends up being the Oompa Loompas in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He's great in this movie as well. And I forget who and then you get my Aunt Jessica, who plays the wife of Ewan McGregor's character, older, who's Albert Finney is older. And real quick here, Big Fish. I can hear my dinner's almost ready. And Helena Bonham Carter plays 2 roles. Billy Crudup is the main character. Alison Lohman plays the younger version of who marries Ewan McGregor's character. Marion Cotillard is Billy Crudup's wife. Steve Buscemi's in it. Miley Cyrus is in it. Loudon Wainwright is in it. Missy Pyle, Robert Guillaume, Deep Roy is his name. I'm sorry. And it's just a great film that did get a bunch of Oscar nominations, and I think it should have won some because the premise is based on a novel where Billy Crudup's character learns that his estranged father is dying of cancer, and his French wife is pregnant with their first child, and they live in France, so they fly over to America because his dad could go at any time, and he's got a lot of issues that he has to get through with his dad. His dad, when he was younger, is what Billy Crudup was a liar. He told all these tall tales of stories about encountering mermaids and giants and werewolves, and Siamese twins and a mystical village in the middle of a creepy swamp and witches and stuff like that. And Billy Crudup is like, you're lying. There's no way that this actually is true. And Albert Finney's character is so it's the father-son relationship is banging heads with each other, is the basis of the film. But we do get to see the stories done that he's talking about as Ewan McGregor's younger version of him and Alison Lohman's younger version of Jessica Lange's thing, as he encounters all in the story he's telling. So the story he's telling is what you see: the giant catfish, the mermaid, the witches, the mystical village in the middle of the swamp, the working at the circus, a werewolf, the Korean War, Siamese twins, all that stuff. You see those robbing a bank, you see all that stuff in flashback as Ewan McGregor, who does a amazing job in the role. And Albert Finney, I think, got an Oscar nomination, didn't win it, but got an Oscar nomination for his role as the older version of Edward Bloom. And he is amazing. My Aunt Jessica, outstanding. Alison Lohman doesn't really do much, but she's good when she's on there. Danny DeVito's character is very quick. Billy Crudup plays the angry son perfectly. Marion Cotillard, who doesn't really do much also, but she's there for support. She's fantastic at it. Helena Bonham Carter is amazing in her two roles as well. And you get to see a lot more than just the visual stuff, but the tall tales that Albert Finney tells, and we flash back to Ewan McGregor doing them, is Burton-esque style of filmmaking. And then you go back to present day where there is no Burton-esque style of filmmaking. Again, another amazing score by Danny Elfman, including the final bit at the end, which has one of the most intensely emotional endings that you're ever going to see in a movie. And I'm not going to get into it because the music and what gets Billy Crudup and Albert Finney to finally see eye to eye is one of the most emotional aspects, and it is a deserved emotional moment in the movie. I'm tearing up thinking about it because it is such a wonderful sequence. The movie is absolutely stunning to look at. It's amazing. Ewan McGregor. All right, be ready in about a second, okay? Ewan McGregor is amazing. Just like the whole cast, Robert Guillaume in one of his last roles ever, Deep Roy, Danny DeVito, everything about this movie. Steve Buscemi is not weird. He's really cool in this movie. And just the ending is such an emotional high and low at the same time. And that makes them see eye to eye is one of the best things ever put forth on film. Big Fish is amazing movie, hugely underrated. Not a lot of people see it. Did not do very well at the box office, but got a ton of Oscar nominations, as it should. Golden Globe nominations, as it should. John August wrote it. I think he was one of the guys that was involved with some other stuff as well. I can't go on because it is such a good movie, and I got to go because it's dinner time. But thank you for hanging out for the list. Go see Big Fish. If you haven't seen it yet, just go see it. If you have seen it, watch it again. It is so good, and it's number one on my list. Tomorrow we're doing the top John Carpenter movies, and then we'll move on from there. Thanks for watching, and I'm leaving. Bye.